Bong is the youngest chef in the Blue House of South Korean, with extraordinary culinary talent. One day, the National Assembly organizes a banquet for the Chinese ambassador and specifically asks Bong to prepare a boneless fish dish, as the ambassador is extremely sensitive about fish bones. After accepting the task, Bong immediately dives into the busy preparation. As night falls, the dinner is finally completed and served to the ambassador. Unexpectedly, as the ambassador takes a bite, he discovers a fish hook hidden inside. Meanwhile, Bong is enjoying a passionate moment with his colleague, completely unaware that he's entangled in a political conspiracy. Later that night, two police officers arrive at Bong's apartment and knock on his door. Bong realizes someone high up wants to frame him, so he tries to escape through the balcony, while the police desperately chase after him. In the chaos, Bong tragically falls into the swimming pool below, hitting his head hard against the bottom. For some reason, as a woman swims toward him and kisses his lips, he continues to sink deeper. When Bong wakes up, he finds himself lying in an unfamiliar bed, in an even stranger room. He feels something is wrong and rushes to the nearby mirror, only to be horrified to see that he's turned into a woman. After pondering for a moment, Bong concludes he must be trapped in a dream due to the fall. Quietly, he sneaks out of the room to figure out what happened. To his shock, he finds dozens of women outside, bowing and addressing him as Your Highness. Surprised, Bong rushes outside the building but suddenly feels a chill between his legs. Only then does he realize he has lost his banana. Initially, he thinks he's been trafficked and even undergone gender reassignment surgery. However, upon observing his surroundings, Bong realizes that he has time-traveled to the past. This realization shocks him, and he is eventually taken back to the palace. Once he calms down, he learns from a maid that it is now the year 1851 in the Joseon Dynasty, and his identity is that of the royal lady So-young. The maid further explains after an unknown accident, So-young's body was found floating in a lake. Fortunately, guards discovered her in time and brought her back to the palace. Bong speculates he and this woman must have swapped souls through the water, and his only hope of returning home lies in that lake. Guided by the maid, Bong heads to the lake and rushed over desperately. Sadly, his plan takes an unexpected turn, and he falls hard onto the muddy ground. The maid explains the Grand Queen Dowager has ordered the servants to drain the lake overnight to prevent anyone from falling into it again. Worse still, she adds that So-young is about to marry King Cheoljong and become the queen. Bong completely breaks down. Not only has he turned into a woman, but now he's being forced to marry a strange man. In desperation, Bong seeks out the king and demands he order the lake to be refilled. However, Cheoljong refuses, as he is merely a powerless puppet emperor with no authority to defy the Grand Queen Dowager. He complains about the queen's strange odor and orders the maid to take her back to the palace for a bath. Despite this, Bong does not give up. He desperately tries to immerse himself in any water source he can find, even a bucket used for mopping the floor. But all his efforts are in vain. Bong finally confesses to the king that he's a strong man who lives 200 years later in the Republic of Korea. Cheoljong believes she is suffering from hysteria and promises that, no matter what it takes, he will help her recover soon. The servants present are envious of the loving couple, but only Bong feels disgusted, as he has no interest in the same sex. After returning to the palace, Bong begins enduring the painful tortures of the royal physician. Faced with an unavoidable fate, he reluctantly accepts his role as queen. A few days later, the wedding day arrives. Bong never expected ancient weddings to be so complicated. Not only does she have to wear heavy royal attire, but she also has to wear a 20-pound crown. As the ceremony begins, the king and queen step onto the red carpet. At this moment, Bong flashes a mischievous smile. She secretly removes her breast wrap, becoming the first woman in Joseon to go without a bra. Then, with the help of her maid, she manages to complete the required wedding rituals. Just when Bong thinks she can finally relax, her maid reminds her that she must conceive a royal baby as soon as possible. This means that tonight, she must sleep with the king. Bong is shocked by the news. She tries to get the king drunk by offering him some wine, but Cheoljong shows no interest in her and warns her to stay away. Suspecting he is playing tricks, Bong ties her clothes into a tight knot. But just as she prepares to sleep, Cheoljong takes all the blankets for himself. She is forced to spend the night on the cold floor. The next morning, Bong is surprised to find that her clothes have been undone, but she has no memory of what happened the previous night. She hurriedly seeks out the king to uncover the truth. Cheoljong tells her they spent a pleasant night together, even hinting that there may soon be a cute baby. Unwilling to believe him, Bong suggests he make a gesture if he's lying. Cheoljong insists that a king never lies. Seeing his serious expression, Bong panics. To regain her clarity as a man, she changes into male attire and heads to the most famous red light district for some fun. After getting drunk, Bong completely forgets her identity and stumbles into the men's restroom. She looks at a man's banana nearby and sadly says, "I too had that things once." She then mournfully cries, "Goodbye, my dragon." Meanwhile, the king also sneaks out of the palace to secretly plot with his trusted confidants on how to take back power from the Grand Queen Dowager. Suddenly, a drunken Bong barges in. She sees a blurry but familiar figure through the curtains, instantly heightening the tension. Just then, the hour bell rings. Bong must hurry back to the palace before the gates close. Fearing she might have overheard their secrets, Cheoljong attempts to kill her. But Bong shows no fear and even claims she's from the special forces. Suddenly, a sharp blade flies by, cutting Cheoljong's face covering. To avoid exposure, Cheoljong manages to break free and quickly escapes. The attacker turns out to be So-young's cousin, In-woo. However, he is actually an adopted son. No wonder the atmosphere was so awkward when they met in the men's restroom. In-woo helps the drunken Bong back to the palace and tells the maid to take care of her. Later, In remembers that the night before the wedding ceremony, he found So-young hiding. She seemed terrified to return to the palace and broke down, saying that everything was a lie. In-woo gently comforts her and seizes the opportunity to confess his feelings. They eventually kiss. The next day, Bong wakes up with a hangover, and the maid offers her some food. However, Bong feels disgusted by the slimy dish and instructs the royal chef to make instant noodles instead. The chef is confused by the term, but tries to follow Bong's instructions to prepare the foreign dish. After multiple attempts, Bong remains unsatisfied with each version. The first dish is too healthy, and the subsequent ones are either too bland or too spicy. Eventually, the chef is exhausted and shouts, "I am not doing this." Not wanting to waste any more time, Bong decides to cook herself. She carefully reviewed her culinary skills and picks up a knife. The maid is very worried because the queen has never cooked before. However, to everyone's surprise, Bong chops vegetables perfectly, with incredible speed and precision. In the end, a delicious dish is created. Bong takes the instant noodles back to her room and enjoys it with her loyal maid. In the kitchen, the royal chef admires Bong's cooking skills, but remains convinced that the food looks good, but will taste bad. To prove his theory, the chef tastes the leftover food in the pot. He dropped the spoon in shock, amazed that such a delicious dish could exist in this world. Soon after, In-woo visits his beloved, wanting to find out who pushed her into the lake that night. Bong is confused by this and has to lie, claiming she has lost all her memories. In-woo feels disappointed, because this means she has forgotten their kiss. However, he doesn't show it and promises to protect her. It is only then that Bong realizes she's in a palace full of all kinds of schemes, and this is no time to enjoy a tour. But unsure of how to investigate the truth, Bong decides to do what he's good at, and tame them with food. His first target is the Grand Queen Dowager, who orders the lake water to be drained. However, the jealous royal chef, protecting his authority, refuses to let Bong inspect the food prepared for the Grand Queen Dowager. Pissed off, Bong challenges the chef to prove her cooking skills. At first, the chef doesn't care about her provocation, but immediately accepts when Bong mocks him. A servant rings a bell, and the competition begins. The chef picks up a knife and cuts a carrot with all his might. But Bong is faster, effortlessly slicing some cucumbers. After a few minutes of cooking, Bong's dish is ready. She rings the bell first and wins the competition. The chef is furious and argues when cooking, speed may matter, but taste matters more. Bong confidently agrees with his statement and asks the royal culinary inspector to taste both dishes to see which one is better. The inspector is amazed by Bong's cooking and calls it a rare delicacy. The chef not only loses face but also his authority, crying out in frustration. Bong, without mercy, announces she will take over the entire royal kitchen. She then uses her new position to analyze the Grand Queen Dowager's meals. The remaining food is all cold or tough food. Bong suspects the Grand Queen Dowager might be picky due to a toothache. An idea sparks in her mind. She first directs the chefs to create an upgraded oven. Then, she orders servants to bring all the oil in the palace and pours it all into a pot without hesitation. Everyone is shocked because all that oil is to use for one whole year. But to ensure the dishes are delicious, Bong doesn't care about the details. She skillfully handles the beef, placing it in the oil and slow frying it overnight at low heat. Next, she slices the untreated fish, placing it in a baking tray filled with coarse salt, and puts it in a furnace with coal. Watching her nonsensical actions, the chef feels sorry for the rare ingredients. To precisely control the heat, Bong stays by the furnace all night. Thankfully, all the effort pays off. She plates the dishes according to Michelin standards and presents the exquisite meal to the Grand Queen Dowager. However, at this point, the Grand Queen Dowager has no appetite due to her toothache. But when she learns that the queen spent the whole night preparing the food, she decides to taste a bite. As Bong anxiously waits for the result, the Grand Queen Dowager walks out, looking angry. Bong thinks she has failed, but to her surprise, she received immense praise. She adds these dishes can help maintain health and youth, and even offers to personally serve the Grand Queen Dowager every day. The Grand Queen Dowager is overjoyed and immediately orders the lake to be filled. Sadly, since it's the 19th century, there are no advanced machines to help complete this task. Therefore, the servants can only carry water by hand using wooden barrels, making the process incredibly slow. Bong is annoyed and quickly comes up with a new method. She asks each servant to stay in one place and simply pass the barrels from one person to the next. Everyone is satisfied with this system because it makes the work easier and faster. They continue the task with patience, while Bong supervises the long process. Meanwhile, the king wants to figure out if Bong knows his secret. To test her, Cheol-jong specially invites her to drink jasmine tea. But when Bong smells the strong tea fragrance, she suddenly remembers what happened that night. She realizes the assassin who tried to kill her was Cheol-jong. Her eyes fill with fear, knowing the tea must be poisoned. She hands the cup to Cheol-jong, asking him to drink it first. Unexpectedly, Cheol-jong feeds her the tea, mouth to mouth. Soon, Bong starts feeling dizzy. But then she recalls Cheol-jong calling out another woman's name in his sleep, and anger fills her. She snaps, "How could you try to kill your wife for another woman?" It is only then that Cheol-jong realizes Bong doesn't know his secret. She angrily yells, "It's because I'm weaker than you that you dare to target me." These words deeply hurt Cheol-jong. He shamefully flees, realizing the reason he attacked the weakest queen is because he is not confident enough to face the powerful. He vows not to use vile methods again and will defeat his enemies openly. Meanwhile, Bong doesn't want to get involved in the dangerous palace conspiracy anymore and wants to return to the present as soon as possible. However, several days pass, and the lake is still not filled. Bong thinks the servants slacked off because no one was supervising them. So, she personally stays by the lake to oversee the progress. Due to the intense heat, she sends her maid to instruct the royal chef to prepare a nice, cool beverage. The chef, full of confidence, gets ready to show off his true cooking skills. Sure enough, Bong is very satisfied with the drink. Seeing the hard-working servants, Bong orders the chef to prepare a bowl of the drink for each one. Everyone is grateful for the queen's generous reward, except the chef, who falls into despair. Later, to pass the time, the maid brings silk thread so Bong can do embroidery. However, Bong, who doesn't know how to embroider, plays modern games with the silk thread instead. While searching for stronger thread, she accidentally discovers an embroidery left by So-young, which reads, "Throwing away my false self." Upon asking, Bong learns that before falling into the lake, So-young had been very melancholic and sometimes cried for no reason. He immediately realizes So-young committed suicide, and the embroidery is her suicide note. Meanwhile, the servants have taken too much water, causing the well to run dry. They sit helplessly on the ground, unsure of what to do. Later in the evening, Bong returns to inspect the lake and learns that the well water has been depleted. She plans to personally test the lake's depth, but the maids desperately stop her, worried that she might attempt suicide again. Reluctantly, Bong sends a servant of the same height as her into the water. Unfortunately, the water is not deep enough to submerge his body, so she cannot return to the present just yet. Bong then continues trying to win over the Grand Queen Dowager by preparing delicious meals for her. First, she pours all the precious milk into a pot, adding the right ingredients and occasionally tasting the mixture. Next, she carefully places potato balls into the pot to cook slowly. When plating, Bong decorates the dish with fresh flowers to make it look more exquisite. She is satisfied with the result and personally serves the dish to the Grand Queen Dowager. The Grand Queen Dowager enjoys the meal, but points out it is not perfect because it grew cold and hardened a bit. Additionally, the porridge spilled onto the plate, affecting its appearance. Feeling discouraged, Bong heads back to her palace with a heavy heart. On the palanquin, she keeps thinking and eventually comes up with a clever idea. Bong sews a piece of cloth and asks her maid to deliver it, along with instructions to the royal engineers. Under Bong's guidance, the engineers build a food delivery palanquin. Next, Bong prepares a series of delicious meals and has the servants use the newly designed palanquin to deliver them. The Grand Queen Dowager, receiving the hot meals, devours it without leaving any leftovers. In the end, this invention proves to be a success. Suddenly, it starts raining heavily. The weather change excites Bong because the rainwater will fill the lake. She can't help but break into a street dance, celebrating in advance. Cheol-jong happens to see this, and her lively and adorable appearance makes his heart flutter. He approaches her, holds up an umbrella for her, and apologizes for his previous reckless actions. Bong no longer cares and explains that everything will return to normal by tomorrow. However, Cheol-jong insists that he cannot just let it pass like this. Bong impatiently tells him to get lost and stop disturbing her dance. Cheol-jong, unable to tolerate her coldness and impoliteness, storms off. The night passes, and the lake gradually fills up. Bong quietly steps out of her room and bids her maids a final farewell. She walks to the lakeside full of anticipation and carves her name into a rock. Then, without hesitation, she jumps into the lake, feeling the painful sensation of suffocation. Just then, Cheol-jong desperately swims towards her. After their separation, he recalls the queen's strange behavior and suddenly realizes that she might attempt suicide again tonight. Panicked, he hurries to the lake and indeed finds the queen's belongings. Bong nervously waves at him, signaling him to leave, fearing that he might ruin her plan. However, Cheol-jong mistakenly thinks she is struggling and desperately pulls her to the shore. Unable to explain the situation, Bong tries to dive into the lake again. Cheol-jong quickly blocks her and even promises to follow all her requests in the future. As they struggle, the maids arrive to take the queen away, while Cheol-jong gazes at her hairpin left behind, lost in deep thought. Afterwards, upon reflection, Bong realizes the reason he successfully time-traveled was because he almost died, but he is afraid that if he tries again, he might truly die. So he decides to find a safe and peaceful way. Bong sets up the room in eerie red, trying to summon a deity to help solve the problem. But suddenly, the maid opens the door, interrupting this foolish act. Frustrated, Bong decides to head to the lake to search for clues. He suspects So-young's soul is also inside his body, and even starts fantasizing about her seducing men everywhere. This drives Bong to the brink of collapse. He tries to hurt So-young's body to force her to come back, but it still doesn't work. Meanwhile, the officials jointly petition the king to depose the queen. They accuse her of habitual suicide attempts and claim she is unfit to be the mother of the nation. To their surprise, Cheol-jong immediately defends the queen and firmly rejects their request. After the meeting, Cheoljong finds Bong and kneels before her to apologize. He confesses his life has always been in hands of her family, and didn't notice that she is also someone innocent struggling in that reality. He promises from now on to treat her with sincerity. The sudden confession leaves Bong feeling overwhelmed as she flees directly. To improve her poor image, Bong hires a group of talkative palanquin bearers, aiming to spread favorable rumors about her. Then, she starts focusing on her delivery business and holds a ceremony. Just then, the king sends her a precious potted plant with a note reading, "In memory of the day they reconciled." This makes Bong feel nauseous. She now wants to focus solely on her career and become as great as Edison or Steve Jobs. That suddenly gives her a strong will to live. However, in the next moment, she collapses to the ground, and the chef finds she has stopped breathing. Back in the present, someone removes Bong's oxygen mask, and his heart stops. Fortunately, after the doctor's desperate efforts, he not only regains his life, but also his soul. However, no matter how much he screams, no one can hear him. Just then, the doctor says he is in a vegetative state, plunging him into despair. Later, Bong learns from the police that he is taking the fall for everything, and the culprit is Secretary Han, who had just tried to kill him. Elsewhere, Cheoljong, upon hearing that the queen has fallen into a coma, rushes to the royal kitchen. After the examination, the royal physician says she is in critical condition. Cheoljong immediately orders that the queen must be saved at all costs. After inserting 108 silver needles, Bong is forced back to 1851. Just as Cheoljong sighs in relief, she faints again. In her coma, Bong keeps calling out for her mom. Cheoljong guesses she is missing her late mother and immediately arranges for a palanquin to send her back to her home. The next day, upon waking up, Bong tries to touch her banana and unsurprisingly, it's gone. She calmly accepts this fate and sits up, only to be blinded by dazzling golden light. Everything in the room is made of gold. Bong briefly thinks she has arrived in the golden empire of the Incas, until the maid enters and she comes to her senses. Upon learning that this is So-young's home, Bong panics because she doesn't know how to face her unseen father. Fortunately, her quick wit helps her navigate this awkward situation. The luxurious lifestyle here, however, far exceeds her imagination. Not only does she get to enjoy 20 different dishes at breakfast, but she also has a personal makeup artist and a luxurious walk-in closet. Bong leisurely strolls through the private garden when suddenly, she's drawn by a familiar scent. She follows it to the storage room and is astonished to find it full of precious treasures and a whole box of gold bars. She can't help but exclaim, "My shiny golden life with a silver spoon." She then leaves a gold bar and a piece of cloth, ordering the maid to bring everything else into the palace. Just then, a servant rushes in to inform her that the king has arrived, and Bong is forcefully taken outside to greet him. As Cheoljong approaches her holding flowers, a scene of So-young being appointed queen flashes through Bong's mind, and her face turns red in an instant. But quickly, Bong snaps back to reality and tries to use the bouquet to drive So-young out of the body. Even so, she still can't control her attraction to Cheoljong. Bong has a vague feeling that So-young's soul might return at any time, and he will be left as a vegetable, lying on a hospital bed forever. Just then, In-woo shows up uninvited. Two men start competing in a drinking contest to win the heart of the same woman. Bong helplessly watches this childish and boring competition, ending up the only one sober. In reality, Cheoljong is pretending to be drunk because he needs to secretly carry out a mission. His purpose in coming here is to find evidence of the Kim clan's crimes. For so many years, the Grand Queen Dowager has used her power to amass great wealth for her family. So-young's father secretly records all of this in a ledger just in case. Only by finding that ledger can Cheoljong regain power and reform the corrupt dynasty. Just then, a masked guy suddenly appears, seemingly also searching for the ledger. Just as the two engage in an intense fight, Bong, who is heading to the restroom, happens to witness the scene. She picks up the chamber pot and rushes out, accidentally hitting Cheoljong. The loud noise catches In-woo's attention, and to cover his tracks, Cheol-jong quickly pulls Bong in and kisses her. Bong cannot control her desires anymore and drags him into the room. The next morning, Bong wakes up and instinctively reaches out to touch Cheol-jong. Cheol-jong suddenly opens his eyes, startling her so much that she immediately rolls away. Looking at the messy room, Bong mistakenly thinks they spent a hot night together. In reality, while she was asleep, Cheol-jong tried again to find the ledger, but found nothing. To continue pleasing the Grand Queen Dowager, Bong plans to find a special meal from outside the palace. At first, Cheol-jong looks down on such lowly food, but in the end, he devours it greedily. At that moment, nearby villagers begin mocking the king for being incompetent, calling him nothing more than a puppet. Upon hearing this, Cheol-jong picks up a bottle and approaches them, but instead of retaliating, he joins them in mocking himself. The insults grow harsher, with the villagers even mentioning that the king comes from a family of traitors. Hearing this, Bong erupts in anger and confronts them, declaring that she is a member of the king's fan club. She warns that if they insult his family again, she will flip their table. Fortunately, Cheol-jong stops her in time and expresses his gratitude. Meanwhile, the Grand Queen Dowager eagerly misses the meals Bong prepared. She immediately summons Bong back and arranges for her to teach the royal chefs her culinary skills. Using common rice soup as examples, Bong showcases her talent. She carefully prepares a pot of oxbone soup, removing the smell of fat with egg whites, then instructs the servant to create a whisk to foam the egg whites. Lastly, she places healthy side dishes on top of the rice, pours the oxbone soup over it, and decorates it with foam. However, the Grand Queen Dowager also looks down on the lowly food, but due to her hunger, she reluctantly takes a bite. To her surprise, the taste reminds her of her mom. Seeing grains of rice on the Grand Queen Dowager's face, Bong knows she has won her heart. She immediately orders the royal physician to find herbs that are good for the skin and smell good, and creates a modern face mask. As expected, this new technique pleases the Grand Queen Dowager greatly. Next, Bong personally cares for the Grand Queen Dowager's skin and hair, making her appear 20 years younger. Amidst praise, the Grand Queen Dowager begins to lose herself, and Bong naturally becomes irreplaceable. Soon after, the Grand Queen Dowager entrusted Bong with the important task of selecting the concubines. Bong shakes hands with each girl, picking out those with whom she felt sparks with at first sight. Over the next few days, she spends time with them, chatting, playing, and even bathing together. She also occasionally shows off his charm, the beauties. At night, Bong tosses and turns, unable to sleep. He decides to write 3 love letters to the 3 concubines, specifically instructing the maid not to let the king see them. However, an accident occurs. All 3 letters end up in Cheol-jong's hands. Soon after, Bong receives replies and marvels at how beautiful the handwriting is. All night, they exchange emotions through letters, though Bong is unaware the replies are actually written by the king. The next day, Cheol-jong unexpectedly runs into the queen and is overjoyed, but the queen completely ignores him and turns to walk away. Confused, Cheol-jong wonders why she acts so differently day and night. A few days later, the king hosts a grand banquet and invites representatives from all over the country. Unfortunately, the chefs fall ill on the day of the banquet, leaving the kitchen short-handed. Bong notices this and decides to offer her help. She quietly sneaks out of the banquet and heads to the kitchen. There, Bong discovers that all the ingredients in the storage are spoiled, and the ones that were supposed to be delivered that day never arrived. With limited resources, Bong has no choice but to get creative. Suddenly, she thinks of a simple yet delicious street food. She peels the potato, wraps it on a stick, and fries it until crispy. At first, the guests are not pleased when they see the first dish, as they expected something more extravagant at a royal banquet. However, once they taste the unique meal, their eyes light up with approval, amazed at the flavor. With no meat in the kitchen, Bong faces a challenge for the second dish. She creatively makes a vegetarian burger using beans and serves it with ketchup. Bong is pleased with her creation and names it McDonald's, inspired by modern McDonald's. The dish, like potato rolls, wows everyone at the banquet. For the final dish, Bong makes an inventive classic jelly dessert, calling it fortune jelly. After eating the dessert, the guests can read their fortunes for the day. This creative idea piques the guests' interest, and they eagerly read their fortunes. Despite some initial hiccups, under Bong's guidance, the banquet is a huge success. Afterward, Bong quickly changes into appropriate attire and heads back to the banquet. At this moment, the king announces a special hunting event. It's a battle among the women, but cruelly, the prey are servants marked with different animal names. Fortunately, the arrows have been specially treated, causing no harm. Bong cannot bear such inhumane competition and quietly hides in a quiet place to rest. Suddenly, an arrow is aimed at her, and the archer is Lady Jo, the king's favored consort. Since Lady Jo noticed the growing closeness between the king and the queen, jealousy brewed inside her. She even teamed up with the queen dowager, plotting to frame the queen. Back to the present, Lady Jo shoots an arrow at Bong without hesitation, but it hits a tree trunk. Bong, terrified, can hardly breathe, unable to believe that this beautiful woman is so ruthless. She wants to escape this dangerous place, but Lady Jo humiliates her in public before arrogantly leaving. Furious, Bong decides to retaliate, but she is too weak, making the situation even more awkward. However, with the help of a servant, Bong eventually wins the final victory. As the banquet nears its end, Cheol-jong heads to the high platform to light incense and pray for blessings. Unexpectedly, the incense burner explodes, severely injuring Cheol-jong. Without hesitation, Bong rushes forward, but is stopped by her father. The scene instantly descends into chaos. That evening, Bong comes to visit Cheol-jong. The royal physician informs her that while the king is no longer in life-threatening danger, he has lost his hearing. As Bong is heartbroken, Lady Jo arrives, drives all the servants away, and blames the queen for everything. She warns Bong to stay away from the king, believing it is all the doing of the Kim clan. Bong doesn't argue, as he also suspects So-young's uncle is behind it. So he heads to the lakeside once again, determined to retrieve So-young's memories and figure out what truly happened that night. This time, he encounters So-young's soul, and memories flood into his mind like a torrent. So-young has always been in love with the king, hoping to become his wife. However, her uncle Kim and the Grand Queen Dowager forced her to spy on the king. If she refused, her dream would never come true. Even her father abandoned her for money and fame. It was only then that she realized her entire life had been built on lies. After Bong learns the truth, she struggles to swim ashore and realizes that this entire palace killed So-young. The next day, the Grand Queen Dowager personally presides over the royal court assembly, but to everyone's panic, the unconscious king miraculously wakes up. It turns out that not long ago, Cheol-jong discovered that the Kim clan was illegally making and selling explosives, so he deliberately planned the explosion. He publicly punished the Kim clan and demanded the Grand Queen Dowager step down from her regency. Elsewhere, upon hearing that the king has regained consciousness, Bong bursts into tears of joy. She tries to get herself drunk because she feels uncomfortable facing Cheol-jong when she's sober. Eventually, the maid takes the drunk queen back to her chamber. Meanwhile, Cheol-jong, reviewing the banquet menu, realizes it was the queen who helped him throughout. He can't wait to go see her. However, the drunk Bong mistakes him for her maid and spends a passionate night with him. The next morning, Bong wakes up in horror, realizing she has made a huge mistake. The memories of last night flood her mind like a horror movie. She questions Cheol-jong about what happened, and he vividly describes every detail. Bong frantically runs out, unable to accept that he had an intimate relationship with a man. What breaks him even more is that he doesn't feel disgusted, but rather begins to enjoy it. He firmly believes that it was So-young's soul controlling the body last night, so he starts avoiding any contact with Cheol-jong. In an attempt to recover his identity, Bong decides to meet with her lover, who has been sending letters. As expected, the letter reaches the king again. When they meet, Bong looks terrified until Cheol-jong reads the love poem she wrote, and she realizes it was a misdelivery. Angrily, she slaps his chest, questioning why he keeps appearing before her, even in her dreams. Upon hearing this, Cheol-jong is delighted and embraces her tightly, causing Bong's heart to race. Afterward, Bong is filled with self-doubt. Just then, the Grand Queen Dowager invites her to taste some food. As Bong is about to sip her drink, a little girl suddenly appears and throws stones at her. Cheol-jong arrives hurriedly, asking if she is all right, while the Grand Queen Dowager orders the girl to be thrown into a cell. Later, Cheol-jong reveals to Bong that her drink had been poisoned. It turns out that the Queen Dowager deliberately set Bong up, trying to sow discord between Bong and the Grand Queen Dowager. Bong realizes that the girl was the one who saved her and begs Cheol-jong to rescue her. That night, Bong secretly goes to the prison and promises the girl that she will prove her innocence. However, before Bong can come up with a solution, the girl is forced to drink poison. By the time Bong arrives, it's too late. She intends to seek justice for the girl, but Cheol-jong stops her. She vents her anger on him, but Cheol-jong ignores her, turning away and giving her a special gesture. Bong recalls that this is their secret signal, meaning everything is a lie. She immediately understands his message and continues her performance, sobbing as she holds the girl's body. Later that evening, the king's bodyguards secretly take the girl away. Meanwhile, Bong begins to reflect on everything that has happened recently. Just then, her father comes to visit and provides more clues. Finally, Bong narrows down 3 suspects who may have wanted to kill her. For a gorgeous revenge, she puts on the most beautiful combat suit, just like The Devil Wears Prada. Round 1, Bong presents a familiar drink to the Grand Queen Dowager and urges her to try it. The Grand Queen Dowager, fearing it might be poisoned, lies and says she's not thirsty. Seeing this, Bong drinks it all in one go and reminds her to be cautious about everything she eats, drinks, and applies from now on. Round 2, Bong bluntly reveals that she knows the Queen Dowager framed her, mocking her for being so cruel that she lost her child early. She then throws the incense on the offering table and warns the Queen Dowager not to provoke her again. The Queen Dowager is furious at her insolence, but feels powerless to do anything. Round 3, Bong mocks Lady Jo for always playing the victim, which has unknowingly turned her into a monster. She suggests that Lady Jo look in the mirror and see how unsightly she is. Lady Jo panics and nearly falls into the lake, but Bong quickly pulls her to safety, proving with her actions that she's a better person than Lady Jo. After the revenge is completed, Bong feels great. Next, she plans to form an alliance with the king to fight against the evil Kim clan. Later that night, Bong finds herself unable to sleep, so she decides to discuss strategies with Cheol-jong, but accidentally sees him changing clothes. Her heart races, and she hurriedly walks away. But soon after, Bong returns to his chamber with a bowl of instant noodles, as she cannot suppress her desires. However, Cheol-jong doesn't understand her hint and just looks at her, puzzled. Helpless, Bong ends up enjoying the delicious instant noodles alone, while Cheol-jong studies military books, planning to build a strong army. Bong knows that history cannot be changed, but she firmly tells him that they will win because she has a secret weapon. The next day, Bong goes to Cheol-jong's secret army and teaches them how to make grenades and bulletproof vests. She also shares the training methods for special forces and helps Cheol-jong establish a new constitution. Soon after, Bong receives news that her father has fallen ill and rushes back home. Her father is deeply worried about her safety and promises to do whatever it takes to protect her. Bong tells him that hiding won't solve the crisis and asks him to help her fight against the evil enemies. The next day, her father distributes all his money and food to the poor people and writes a ledger that can expose the crimes of the Kim clan. Bong hopes to use this to ask Cheol-jong to spare her father's life. Cheol-jong promises that as long as her father helps collect evidence, he will ensure his safety. Just as their plans progress smoothly, Bong suddenly discovers that she is pregnant. This unexpected news makes everyone ecstatic, but Bong falls into deep despair. He never imagined that, as a man, he would experience such an absurd fate. Worse still, Bong must do prenatal education every day and cannot eat instant noodles or drink alcohol. She cannot bear such a painful life and sits on the floor, crying uncontrollably. When Cheoljong hears the news, he immediately takes Bong out to relax. He promises to eliminate the corruption in Joseon so that their child can smoothly inherit the throne. Upon hearing this, Bong suddenly has an epiphany. Her child is the future king, and she will be the one with the power to do whatever she wants. With this in mind, she eagerly returns to the palace to prepare her prenatal education diary. Elsewhere, the Queen Dowager orders the maid to spread a rumor that the Queen and the King faked spending nights together. This makes everyone wonder whose baby the Queen is carrying. To put an end to the rumor, Bong publicly shows affection for Cheoljong in an embarrassing pose, even describing how passionate those nights were to the concubines. However, the rumor continues to spread, even reaching the officials. To protect the Kim clan's centuries-old reputation, the Grand Queen Dowager decides to eliminate the Queen and assigns the task to In-woo. In-woo, unable to harm the woman he loves, tells Cheoljong about the plan and says the only solution is for Cheoljong to personally eliminate the Eastern bandits, because it would be immoral to attack the wife of a king who is fighting for the country, and the rumor will lose its power. Cheoljong knows everything is a trap set by the Grand Queen Dowager and In-woo, but to protect his wife and unborn baby, he goes off alone to eliminate the bandits without hesitation. When Bong hears the news, she rushes out, only to see Cheoljong's receding figure. She's sure there's a reason for him to go in such a hurry. As expected, when Cheoljong reaches a remote mountain path, his guards reveal their true intentions. At that moment, In-woo shows up and challenges Cheoljong to a duel. The two are evenly matched. Cheoljong looks for an opportunity to kick In-woo away and desperately escapes. To seek a chance for survival, he jumps off a cliff. Meanwhile, Bong feels intense movement in her belly, and a very dreadful hunch fills her with unease. Even after drinking the medicinal, she still can't sleep with all these memories flooding in. To distract herself, Bong begins to focus on embroidery, but the moment she pricks her finger, she can no longer hold back her tears. Not long after, terrible news arrives. The king has passed away. After the conspiracy succeeds, the Grand Queen Dowager eagerly announces the king's death and prepares to enthrone a new king in 5 days. Bong refuses to believe that Cheoljong could die so easily. She disguises herself as a servant and sneaks into the mourning hall, where she discovers that the body in the coffin is not Cheoljong's. Returning to her chamber, Bong immediately informs her maids of the good news and plans to ruin the coronation. To avoid suspicion, Bong makes her face look pale and then goes to the mourning hall, crying in despair. Eventually, the maids quickly escort the weak queen back to her chamber. Later that day, Bong takes out the luggage she prepared earlier and sets off alone to find the king. Unfortunately, In-woo suddenly appears and blocks her path. Bong confesses that she's not the woman whom he has been loving so much. To prove this, she shoots him in the leg without hesitation. Only then does In-woo finally believe her words, because So-young wouldn't treat him like this. Just as Bong jumps over the wall, she encounters the maids who have been waiting for her. They refuse to let the queen face the danger alone, insisting on accompanying her. In the end, Bong agrees to accept their help. After a full day and night of searching, Bong still finds no trace of Cheoljong. Exhausted, the three are about to take a break when a group of guards suddenly closes in. Seeing this, Choi desperately blocks the enemies but ends up gravely wounded, while Hong pulls Bong away to escape quickly. Hong later hides Bong in a safe place and goes to distract the remaining pursuers. As Bong picks up her bow, she suddenly notices In-woo standing above her. Terrified, she runs, eventually cornered at the edge of a cliff. In-woo tightly grips her neck, demanding to know who she really is. Bong struggles fiercely, and In-woo seems determined to kill her. Suddenly, a memory of So-young calling his name flashes through his mind. He regains his senses, throws Bong aside. The guards soon arrive, and In-woo takes out his sword to shield Bong. She doesn't understand why he's doing this, but she has no choice but to trust him. While escaping, a masked assassin appears and blocks their way. The two soon engage in a fierce fight. The assassin looks for a chance to kill the queen, but In-woo, protecting her, is gravely wounded. Bong, furious, throws a stone at the assassin, then quickly helps In-woo up and flees. However, In-woo's wound keeps bleeding, leaving him too weak to move. He gives Bong a letter containing the names of those who plotted the treason, instructing her to use it to protect herself. Bong is unwilling to leave him behind and tries to cover the blood on the ground, but In-woo urges her to leave quickly and tells her never to look back. Just then, the assassin comes chasing again. In-woo fights with all his strength to block him, but tragically dies. Bong completely breaks down at the sight, but she can do nothing except run desperately. In his final moments, memories of So-young flash through In-woo's mind. He longs to touch her face one more time, but never gets the chance. Meanwhile, Bong hides behind a big tree, holding her breath. The assassin senses something and slowly walks toward the trees, luckily not the same one. Only then does Bong finally let out a sigh of relief. She wanders through the valley in a daze, not knowing where to go. Suddenly, a torchlight approaches slowly, but Bong falls to her knees in despair, waiting to be captured. Fortunately, it's Cheol-jong. He holds her tightly in excitement, while Bong bursts into tears, pouring out all her pain. Cheol-jong explains that after falling off the cliff, a medicinal herb hunter saved him, and he even finds the surviving maids in the valley. Later, the two return to the base together. Bong first hugs Hong excitedly, then asks how Choi escaped. Choi says the soldier wasn't very skilled and she was lucky enough to avoid a fatal blow. In the end, the three of them share a joyful embrace. The next day, Bong is drawn by the noise of training. Cheol-jong explains he has gathered a group of oppressed peasants and plans to fight the corrupt dynasty alongside them. Since tomorrow is the coronation, the team begins to discuss how to return to the royal palace, and Bong comes up with a perfect idea. The Grand Queen Dowager must eat fresh food every day, so there's one gate for transporting ingredients always stays open. With the plan in place, the team springs into action. On the way back, Bong comes across In-woo's body. To honor his sacrifice, she buries him with her own hands. Soon after, the group meets Cheol-jong's bodyguards. After a night's rest, Bong and Cheol-jong decide to return to the palace first. They stop a wagon carrying fresh ingredients and force the driver to hide them inside. At the same time, Kim hands a sniper rifle to his man, ordering him to shoot the king on sight. Later, when the wagon enters the palace, suspicious Kim stops it. After a thorough inspection, the guards find nothing unusual, but Kim still thrusts his sword into the wagon. Luckily, Bong and Cheol-jong are hiding in another wagon and manage to slip into the palace safely. Suddenly, a bomb flies toward the wall. The guards panic, but in reality, it's only a smoke bomb. More smoke bombs follow, plunging the entire scene into chaos. The team seizes the chance to launch an attack and breaks into the royal palace. Elsewhere, Cheol-jong and Bong change into combat suits and head for the ceremony, but are blocked by a group of guards. In the fierce fight, Bong dodges a flying dagger and strikes back with precision. Suddenly, the bell rings. The Grand Queen Dowager, worried about unexpected incident, holds the coronation ahead of schedule. Cheol-jong grows anxious, but Bong remains calm because she had already prepared a backup plan. Just as the coronation ceremony is about to end, the official panic when he realizes the royal seal is missing. It turns out, Bong secretly ordered her younger brother to steal it before leaving the royal palace. Not knowing where to hide it, her brother hands it over to the king's most trusted bodyguards who have been imprisoned. While everyone is busy searching for the seal, Cheol-jong and Bong arrive outside the main hall. Just as they wonder why no one is there, Bong spots a sniper in the distance and, without hesitation, steps in to block the bullet. The sniper fires again, this time hitting Cheol-jong in the chest. At that moment, the king's bodyguards arrive. Together, they corner the assassin and end his life without mercy. Meanwhile, the dying Bong desperately tries to grab Cheol-jong's hand. At this crucial moment, Bong's soul suddenly returns to the 21st century. He is desperate to know if Cheol-jong is safe, but while trying to steal the phone, he accidentally wakes the police officer. Left with no choice, he risks escaping the hospital and rushes to a bookstore to look up historical records. It turns out that the instant Bong returned to the present, So-young's soul also returned to her body. Luckily, they are wearing a bulletproof vests and survive. Just then, Kim charges at them with his sword, but So-young stabs his thigh with her hairpin. Cheol-jong tries to fight back, but is no match for him. Watching his beloved wife struggle in pain, Cheol-jong reignites his fighting spirit and shatters Kim's sword. Kim closes his eyes, quietly waiting for death. But Cheol-jong doesn't kill him, because his real punishment is to live the rest of his life in indignity. Cheol-jong then rushes to check on his wife's injuries. So-young urges him to conclude the conflict first. Just then, the guards arrive with the royal seal and promise to protect the queen. Finally, Cheol-jong storms into the main hall and takes back his dragon throne. Unfortunately, So-young loses consciousness from heavy blood loss. After a full night of effort, the royal physician saves both her and the baby. Cheol-jong holds her hand tightly and cries tears of relief. Soon after, So-young visits the Grand Queen Dowager and declares her era is over, and she will spend the rest of her life locked away in a remote palace. Back in her chamber, So-young can't help but shout, "That felt so good!" Cursing out loud feels so refreshing to her. Meanwhile, the Queen Dowager is also incarcerated for spreading false rumors against the queen. The corrupt officials all receive punishment, and Kim is paraded in the streets, condemned by the people. Back in the present, Bong is happy to see Cheol-jong rules the country well, but when he sees the portrait of Cheol-jong, he suddenly remembers how Cheol-jong used to make him laugh, and a wave of sadness hits him. Just then, police officers appear, and Bong instinctively runs. They immediately explain they are there to protect him. Not long ago, Bong had reported Secretary Han's corruption, which led to him being attacked and thrown into the pool. It turns out that while changing Cheol-jong's fate, he also changed his own. At the end of the story, Bong watches the news about Secretary Han's arrest and realizes a truth. If you try hard to change your life, the world changes along with it.